So, if you've never done this before, this is the public humiliation. So, only throw soft things at us. There's Jermaine at the back there. He's got the mic. So basically, we're going to field questions from you for an hour, and you can just ask absolutely anything you want. Jermaine will pass the mic around, so just raise your hand. And whoever wants to go first, then go first. Okay. Larry says if you want us to do anything physical, he'll do it.
I'll ask at once. There we go.
Hello. So basically, we're still running version 1.3. So thanks for discontinuing it. Well, what's our best strategy for moving over to 3? Basically, all our business application code is written in 1.3. So we really don't want to lose all that or have to start from scratch. So what is it you guys suggest we do?
You can do nothing. That is an option. Just because it's no longer supported doesn't mean it's going to vaporize and erase itself off your hard drives. If there's no business requirement for continuing to upgrade it and move it forward, and you guys can't fight for the business people, I don't know how it works, but
we're very keen to upgrade.
Oh, okay. Some companies aren't. Some companies are like, it's not broken, don't fix it until it's broken. And so sometimes that discussion's a lot harder. But if you're keen to do it, one way you could approach it is to move it piece by piece. So make an application that sits beside your current one, and then maybe move one controller at a time.
So that's similar to what we sort of considered, was maybe having 3 as being the main router, or use the router from 3 to back off onto 1.3.
Yep.
If the route doesn't. Yeah.
You can also do it at the web server level. Like at my company, I work for a company that doesn't use Cake, but we have a whole bunch of crazy code. And the way we've done it before is we just we take URLs and we whitelist them. We just set them up in the web server redirects, and then this path. Everything underneath this path goes to this application. Everything underneath this path goes to this application. So you put Nginx in front. We're using Nginx. You can use some sort of load balancer. You put Nginx in front, say this set of paths goes over to that application, this set of paths goes to that application, and then you can move it piece by piece and update your web server config as you go. So you don't have to sit down and rewrite it for 2 years, right? You can do it in maybe a month or 2 weeks. You can get one piece working and get it moving piece by piece. That's how I would do it, because I've been on 3-year rewrites and it's not fun. You just want to not work where you're working anymore afterwards. Yeah, anyone else has?
There's also another option, and I think you missed that chance for the last 2 years. You could have upgraded to 2.x already, and that would probably save you another few years now in the life cycle. And
It's not going to be years.
well, maybe, well, hopefully not. But yeah, I don't see any reason at all to stick to 1.x, because upgrading to 2.x is pretty much flawless compared to maybe future upgrades, due to a lot of regex you can use and help, like my upgrade plugin I wrote. I mean, I upgrade with that huge applications in a few days, and it worked quite flawless, because there you just have to change the syntax. It's not like with 3.x where you change to objects and 90% of the code changes. So it's doable, and that would probably also be an immediate thing you could do, and to have an workable application again that is not that ancient anymore as 1.x is, from my point of view.
I would just repeat what Mark said. I think the best approach is divide and conquer. Try to find the best small set of features that can work on its own. For example, just taking my own application as a use case, I would take consoles or shells as their own thing. They basically are. We have more than 100. That's the main core of our application, and it's quite easy to say, well, this one is pretty much isolated. I can call it using another application or another framework like Cake 3. And as for the web server, that's a very good solution. Is try to have 2 apps and serve from them. I think the biggest challenge is session. So you need to kind of hack the session in 1.3 so that it understands session from 3.0. It's almost super easy to do. You just need to get full control of the session in the Bootstrap. But yeah, that's the way I would do it. I'm not sure if... Yeah.
And I think on top of that, if you don't have any tests, I think you should probably write tests first and then start moving that. We have moved our application that was 1.3, had like 300 models, and using the upgrade plugin, more than half of it was migrated. And the tests really helped to see what was the last bugs that you still needed to be ported to the new code and whatnot.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We don't buy HW wall. Alright, that's the end of it. That was fast.
So what, we got 45 minutes to drink?
45 minutes, 45 beers.
Sure.
There are 2.
Got a couple.
So I know. So I know you guys said that you're going to be for sure releasing a 2.6, or almost for sure, right? For sure releasing a 2.6. So does that mean that if we wanted to submit features that could possibly change the API in 2.0, we should still, in the 2 branch, we should still do that?
Well, we have a policy to not change the API.
Well, not the
2.0.
API, sorry. But would change how it would work. It wouldn't change the API per se.
But
Yeah.
if it's a new
Functionality.
feature, then yes, probably. Especially if it can be ported to 3.0 at the same time. I'm okay to that. We cannot change much of the functionality unless it's a very nasty bug. For example, the after find is a good example. In some cases, after find will be called twice in 2.5 with different data for the same relationship. So that's a bug that was fixed in 2.6, or it's a pull request for that at least. Changes in the functionality, but it's a big enough bug to be considered important to be merged.
Okay.
But yeah, in general, we accept new features, but not breaking changes.
I wanted to ask about. I wanted to ask about the CSS framework, basically support. There's styling that is built into Cake, which is, as far as I know, pretty much everybody replaces it with Twitter Bootstrap or something similar. Are there any plans, or have you thought about replacing it as well in the core?
Let Mark answer this. He's pretty much the designer of Cake.
Yeah, the CSS is there. It's not intended to be good. It's intended to get you started. As for replacing it with Twitter Bootstrap, that has been discussed many times. I'm not in favor of it personally. The reason is, if we had done that in 2, we would be stuck with Twitter Bootstrap 2, and everyone would be just as sad as they are now. But they would have a lot more CSS to be sad about, and they would still have to do just as much work to go to Twitter Bootstrap 3. So if we do it and we put Twitter Bootstrap 3 in and Twitter Bootstrap 4 comes out, everyone will be just as sad. So now they have a very small amount of sad, but we could make it a very big amount of sad if we wanted. So that's the other reason, that's the main reason, is it locks us into kind of working with Twitter Bootstrap 3, like the way our versioning works, like we don't break compatibility, so we can't change the class names because other people are probably using them. And because we can't change the class names, you can't work with Twitter Bootstrap in the future. So that's why we've avoided it, and often people want to use Foundation, or they want to use Skeleton, or whatever new CSS framework comes out. That's why it's kind of very minimalist and very janky. I can delete all the CSS and we can have unstyled pages by default, but I think that would be worse. One thing we have done is made we've been trying to make the HTML much more easy to hook into Twitter Bootstrap for 3.0, because that is something that comes up time and time again. And I think there's one last pull request to make it finished, and then it would just be changing, I think it's like 5 or 6 HTML tags, like HTML string templates, to make all the forms just work. So it's something we're aware of that people really want, but we don't want to lock ourselves in and paint ourselves into a corner. Yeah.
So version 3 moving to PHP 5.4 was an awesome move, especially seeing as CodeIgniter, if version 3 ever comes out, will have made the massive leap to 5.2. Are there any plans to use 5.5 features or 5.6 features as like optional things like generators?
We are already using one 5.5 feature, and we are shim. There's the password combat. I don't know if you followed the repository. Yeah, we're already using that. So if you are on 5.5, you can use it natively. Otherwise, the shim kicks in, and it's used in 5.4 as a backwards compatible library approach. And I bet there will be more coming out, probably.
So language features like generators are a little bit more tricky, obviously, as you know. But we've discussed internally like whether like 3.1 or 3.2, maybe not 3.1, but maybe 3.2 or 3.3, we could go to 5.5. And it makes a lot of the iterators a lot easier because you don't have to do iterator, iterator, iterator. You can just use generators. We all like iterators, but generator, generator, generator. Yeah, and you also get access to finally and yield, and like that's generator, but you get access to finally, which solves a lot of weird code problems. Yeah, so I don't think it's off the table at all. Maybe Jose has something to say.
Yeah, I personally would like in 3.2 perhaps to go to 5.5 at least. And there is actually one feature from 5.6 that we use now. It is _debug info. It does nothing right now in PHP 5.4, but we actually have a class that when it dumps the object, it actually shows the debug info of the object. So if you happen to run the Cake in 5.6, which runs actually, and you do bar dump of an object, you will get that information. So like with using the debug function. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Excuse me. Just a quick question about the ACL that Serum covered earlier on. He's mentioned that Lorenzo is not in favor of using ACL, I think. Am I correct? So I'm sure you will say something like, it depends. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So may I know what, in your opinion, when I should use ACL and when I should not use?
So I guess that's a question directed to me. I do find ACL very, very complex, and I haven't used it for more than 6 years now. So that makes me believe it is not that needed in much applications. So I'm going to tell you the 2 reasons why using ACL is a good idea. One, when you have a dynamic set of permissions. So you cannot know in any way in advance what permissions will be created. So for example, let's talk about the Stack Overflow. And there are 2 kind of users, we could say 3. There's the admin, there is the creator of a question, and there is the one that answers the question, right? So you know in advance what permissions are available, right? You know that the one that creates a question only can, it's the one that can edit the question, and no one that is commenting, sorry, can edit it. And those that comment can only edit their own comments. So in that case, you know in advance what are the permissions. So it's not a good idea to use ACL. The other reason to use ACL is when you need to create some sort of interface to dynamically assign permissions to users or to dynamically assign groups. If you cannot hardcode the permissions, like for example in a config file in your application, then it's a good idea using ACL. In the vast majority of applications, I find having a default set of permissions defined perhaps in a config file or maybe in database, like in a super small table, is more than enough. So you don't need a complex tree structure to manage your permissions, and most probably you won't need in most applications an interface where I can say, okay, this user can only read on this resource. So yeah, that's my take. I'm not sure if anyone has anything to add. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are so many changes in the framework. Should be so many questions. Yeah.
You covered everything. It's done. I was wondering if 3.0 is going to support like a JSON API.org style API out of the box, or if it would be easier to configure.
It probably won't do it out of the box, but I'm considering building a plugin to do it. It shouldn't be very hard to traverse the entity trees and like the entity graph, and then find properties that are associated, and then strip them out and make them top-level entities and collections. I think the JSON API has a lot of good things, but it has some odd bits in it as well. Yeah, that's my take. I think we can do it through a plugin, through a specialized view class. That's how we do the JSON and the existing JSON and XML APIs. But yeah, that's what my plan was. I don't know if you want to help, you can help. Or you can start it and then I'll help you.
Doesn't work. Oh, okay. I wanted to ask about not so much about CakePHP itself, but the contributions, basically the plugins, themes, etc. There is a place where you can find them obviously around the Cake sites, but it doesn't look like it's, I don't know, not very well maintained. It's difficult to find things around. So some plugins are for different versions of CakePHP, etc. Have you thought about it, or is there something?
So mostly, so we have the plugins.cakephp.org website. Most of it is actually just people submitting plugins at this point, categorizing that stuff, obviously. The next step would be to just make it so that it's pretty simple for us to say this is a 2.x versus a 3.x plugin. I've seen that there aren't that many 3.x plugins, so there's not a big push to do that. As far as like surfacing like good plugins or like popular things, we've thought about it. It's mostly a matter of time, so if you want to contribute, great. And I think like Dear Mark gets on my ass every like 2 or 3 months about adding a feature or removing a feature or something, so that's mostly a matter of time, I guess.
Until then, you might want to check out the awesome CakePHP list, if you have seen it. It should have like 2.x and 3.x branches, and there you can contribute and check out all the new plugins arriving. And I think there should be like many popping up now the next few weeks. I mean, Cake 3 is now beta, and many people are probably gonna hook up and try to work with it and write plugins for it. And yeah, try it.
What is the workflow for database migrations in 3.0? Will you update the migrations plugin, or how should we work with it?
Yeah, we have a plugin. It's already done. It already works. Works quite good. We based it on a existing library called Things Migrations. It's very solid. One of the guys that also contributes to CakePHP, he basically grabbed a bunch of our code and also contributed the SQL Server driver, which is the only thing missing to make it stable for us. So I wrote a wrapper around that. It's working and is currently in my CakePHP account, in my GitHub account. And I plan to tidy up the code a bit, add some tests, and then donate it to the CakePHP account so it's official. But you can start writing migrations right away.
I think the one feature that we're missing for 3.x is the ability to write migrations completely from the command line. And that's something that was released recently for the CakePHP version, and I do plan on like porting that to Finks itself. So if you're familiar with like Rails migrations where you type it on the command line, we have that for Cake 2 right now, and we don't have that for Cake 3. So that's the only other big BC incompatible change that we're waiting to port. No one?
One fictitious question, since MySQL proxy is unreliable, what do we have? Do we have any alternative?
I didn't understand. What is unreliable?
It's not even like beta right now, is it? It's like alpha or pre-alpha or something.
Yeah. And that would be a question for the MySQL community manager. Not sure.
I mean, we won't have a solution built in to the framework for that, for like proxying like read versus write commands to different databases. I know that I've seen quite a few apps that do that sort of in their app model where they sort of detect whether or not it's a read or a write. That sort of stuff is kind of a bit tricky to maintain, but you can go that route for sure. And I've done that in non-CakePHP apps. So right now we have, I work on a Symfony 1x app where the base like database layer will sort of proxy to one connection versus the other based on like pretty complex regex to I mean, it works, sort of.
The previous talk, the MySQL optimization, that we had before lunch, he talked about a Peggle extension that already works. I'm not sure if it works with PDO, but I think it does. That basically does that job for you. You register the servers that it can connect to, and it will do the load balancing for you automatically. So I think that would be the right solution to do it in PHP.
Thank you.
No. Can never go wrong.
It's like Mongo. It's not a big deal. Why isn't my replication working?
Any more questions?
Don't shoot the messenger for this one. I was reading Twitter this morning and there was a general comment, but I'm going to change it into a question for you. And it's why will you ever separate the ORM from CakePHP to make it its own separate package so it's not as tightly coupled?
That's a personal goal for me. It's not I'm not sure if everyone heard the question. The question is if there are plans to make the ORM into a separate thing that can be used outside CakePHP, and that's actually one of my personal goals. When I started writing it, I tried to be to make it as concise as possible in terms of how many extra CakePHP libraries it would use. Right now, it doesn't use much as a framework. It does have a few dependencies, but I think that most software has dependencies, so that's not a problem. But it's a general misconception that a library, in order to make to be useful, should depend on nothing, which is not often true. So if you see it from that angle, you can just basically Composer require CakePHP 3 and start using the ORM, because it does basically it does not require you to bootstrap the full framework in order to use it. You just can use any class inside it. I'm not sure if Mark has anything to add.
We've also talked about doing the read-only splits, the subtree splits that other projects have done. So that's something we have talked about, but we haven't actually done because it's a lot of work to write all the scripts that automate all those subtree splits. So yeah, we could do a subtree split. You could do what Jose does, the poor man's subtree split, where you just only use the pieces you want. But I know a lot of people, like myself included, only want the dependencies that I'm actually using, and I don't want a large full stack framework inside my other full stack framework because that's strange. And it also like gives the people working on the project the temptation to just reach in and use other pieces they're not supposed to. So I can totally understand that. Right now I think the ORM depends on the database layer, and there's one place where it depends on a cache instance. If you're doing query result caching. Other than that, I don't think it has very many dependencies. So it should be fairly easy to rip out. It's just I think it's just a time and effort type thing.
Not so specifically CakePHP again. More, can you share a little bit more about how you guys actually work, because you're a measurable team and you're from different places, and how you communicate, how you handle feature developments, conflict resolution, things like that. What's the planning, etc., etc.
You want it? Yeah. Well, you get a second. We basically just yell at each other. But like seriously, that's a big problem. We have a couple people who are in like Indonesia, Japan. They're all over the place, right? So it's very rare that everyone is online at all. I tried about a year ago to set up Google Hangouts, but that sort of didn't work because of time zones again. So a lot of it's offline, I guess. We do a lot of GitHub work. The mailing list as well. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
IRC mailing list, things that are discussed publicly. Of course, you see a lot of things going on GitHub itself. We used to do that and track before, and then we started doing it at Lighthouse. And internally, everything is IRC or the mailing list, though. So.
Yeah, I can only second that. Who of you is in IRC once in a while? That's not the majority, is it? Because I have to admit, I mean, I've been like on IRC now for maybe 2 years, something. And before I didn't know it existed. And it really spiked the communication, because then you can just in real time discuss things in an informal way. Because in GitHub, you know, if you say something, it's like written there forever and everyone gets an email, and you can't just like put out ideas you have in your mind and discuss it first with others. And on IRC, everyone is online at some point, and you always have a few people you can talk to. So yeah, check out the channel. You don't have to write anything. You can just listen and lurk, and you'll always be like the first one to know what's going on and all the updates out there. So it's a great place to get information, both passively and actively.
Yeah, the IRC sits around 120 to 170 people, all 24 hours. So most of the feature development starts off like with at least one person coming up with an idea and proposing it. They'll usually send out something to the mailing list or just have some informal conversation in IRC. And then it turns into like probably I'm a little bit more formal than some people because I have to write things down for it to make sense in my brain. So what I do is I usually write up like an issue or a wiki page about what I'm going to do and what I want to do and everything that's going to change and how I'm going to break stuff and how I'm going to fix stuff, what the problems are, what the solution is, and then I try and get feedback on that. And from there, I find it's really easy to just work on a wiki page that doesn't actually have any code. That's actually how Jose and I worked on the ORM originally, is we had a bunch of wiki pages with code samples in it. It's like, this is how it's going to work. And we had actually no idea how we were actually going to make it work. But we knew where we wanted to go. So that's what I do. I write out pages of text that I think should turn into code that I want to work. And then I work backwards from a wiki page into code that works. And then the ORM development was like several months, but other features are a lot smaller. Like we'll just do a pull request and discuss it. People will have objections or disagreements, and we just kind of sort it all out. Yeah.
I'd like to add that we do have like an internal, like core only IRC room as well as a mailing list. Sometimes we do actually like get into arguments over specific things. I think like the composer requirement in 3.x was but we do actually discuss some of the more major changes there, and someone might leave a link behind and then say, can you comment on it when you have time? And then we have logs for the IRC rooms, and someone can scroll back and see what happens there.
So I think that's a really good question, because you sort of touch upon how does the open source process work. And tomorrow we got the hour of contribution, so there's going to be a lot of time invested there on showing you how we do it and how other people do it. The stuff they touched upon there is like the beginnings of something. So like Mark and Jose mentioned, we start discussing something, and then there's some conversation, and then Mark maybe writes out a wiki. Some of his wikis are still around, and I really enjoy reading them sometimes, and they're really great looking up. And it's nice to look back and see what Mark had going through his head and how it actually turned out, like with the refactoring you did internally with the stack. That was really good, because I was out doing something. I missed when he actually committed all the code. Then I went to the code and I looked back on what he'd actually proposed, and you could see the evolution of how it went from idea, to proposal to implementation. But it's good to keep in mind that the process in CakePHP is very open. Once the work starts, you guys can all see it. Like right now with Cake 3, you can see what's going on. You can see what's happened, through the Git log and through the history of the project. And once somebody starts working on code, whether it's Lorenzo, working like on the migrations thing in his own repository, or whether somebody's working directly committing to the CakePHP repositories, you guys can get involved. So you can jump in, and if you're seeing something going on, you're thinking, wait a minute, that's a cool idea, but I tackled that like a year ago, and I can tell you that you're going to have a problem here, and I don't want to have that problem because I use your framework. So here's my ideas, and I can get involved. And all of that discussion is open. I mean, even between us, the discussion is there on the commit threads. So it's a very open process. So the discussions happen, and sometimes the decisions are made in the thread. I remember with the view cells, there was a lot of stuff that actually came from another idea from another thread, and it turned, Jose kind of turned it around and ended up with the view cells. So it's a process which is very open to the community contributing, and we try to be open. There is a closed IRC where we sort of talk about stuff, but once it starts happening, it's out there. It's very, very open.
The view cells was actually really interesting. It came up in a subsequent like GitHub thread that someone had proposed, and we're like, oh, I think it was Jose said, yeah, you should look at the view cells from Ruby, and then I think a week later someone had prepared a patch and sent it, and it was a lot of discussion about how it should work, and we just kind of discussed it over working code. So that was a really fun process actually. We had I think it was a pretty big thread. I think it was well over 100 comments on it. It was a very long discussion, like 2 weeks of going back and forth, because everyone's in different time zones, right? Like I live in the East Coast with like Savant, and like Larry's an hour off. A whole bunch of the guys are in Europe. There's a guy in India, a guy in Indonesia, a guy in Japan. So we have to wait. Like sometimes you wait 6-7 hours to get a response from someone because they're sleeping, or like they're actually just not there. It's like the weekend there, so they're gone. Yeah, that was a fun one. Glad it came up. Do you have anything, Mark?
And this isn't the way it's been done from the very beginning. I mean, you go back to the beginning, it was, we would write something, write code, argue about it, delete SVN branches, different things, and, if we didn't like something, we wouldn't merge it into the core. Now it's a lot more open, and having a larger group. I mean, originally there was 3 of us, and then it kind of started growing from there, and it stayed. Even after Michael originally left, a couple more people came on, so we had like maybe 5 core contributors, and none of us could agree. This group that we have now, I think for the most part, we agree on everything except for him and this one. So this, who? Oh, that's true. Yeah, we don't have everybody here, but it's a project that's grown extensively in the code base and the number of contributors over the years. So Yeah, that's. I wish if we could go back and do it all over again. Like to have had this knowledge starting off an open source project 10 years ago. Would have been a big difference.
I just want to make an important translation of what Larry said. Larry said we couldn't come to an agreement basically means nobody could agree with Larry.
Oh. That's true. Yeah, that. No, it was a different group back then, and everybody had their own ideas. Things that we can do in PHP now, we couldn't do back then. You know, I'm the guilty one of that model layer. You know, that was an idea at 2:30 in the morning one time. I don't know if Andy was around then or not. He talked about, you were around, I know. So there's a few people that's been around using it, you know, since those times, but yeah, if we could have got the objects back then, and even in 2.0, or you know what we've seen with PHP 5, we still couldn't do what we're doing now in CakePHP. And you know, well, this was part of my talk yesterday. I told Jose once before, don't tell me how to code. He come in and was talking crap about some code that had been written, and you were just coming to CakePHP, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I told him, I said, don't tell me how to code, you little punk.
Don't try to teach me PHP.
Don't try to teach me PHP. And, you know, I told him earlier today, I was like, man, I just can learn from you now. And that's something that, you know, you step back and look after years of being in a project. You know, it's a good thing when younger guys come up and they can show you some things.
What am I? You look like you wanted the microphone. No, I was just looking. Oh. I won't look at you anymore. That's a question. One last question.
Can I start? Yeah, hey. It's on? Yeah, it's on. Hello. I have a question. Beside pure coding and your future visions, what is your vision about community and how you want to expand the community and maybe create some kind of more activities for the community, hackathons, being more social and open to the people who are not so really involved into the development or co-development, but they would like to. So maybe maybe you have a political plan. What is your plan for the near future to expand the community and the community work? Maybe to let it grow and to make it progress.
Yeah, well, I can answer most part of that question. Actually, that's the discussion we started 2 years ago in Manchester, I think, with James. Afterwards, I started a user group in the Netherlands, CakePHP that does like 3 or 4 meetups in a year. We have Pierre from France and Mark from Berlin. That's actually starting user groups in other countries. Well, actually, France already exists, but needs to revive a little bit. And we have been discussing internally how we can support those user groups in these 3 countries and maybe in the future in other countries to have this package we can hand out to them. Like there's support for the meetup website. We have this ecosystem where you can communicate with your community. Some other things. So yeah, it's definitely something we're looking into, how we can support the user groups that are already there, and we hope to see them in other countries. So if you're from some country and you're willing to run a user group, just contact James. He's our community manager, and see how we can help out. So.
This is one that James has been the community manager now for a year and a half, going on 2 years. 2 places where I'd say that we failed it with the framework is community management, which we have that taken care of, and promotion. The promotion, or what? Marketing, that's the word I'm looking for. See, that, yeah, we're developers. We're not marketers. So, coming up with ideas to push the framework out there more, get more people interested in it is kind of where we failed off. It's like, my opinion was, if you use it, like it, keep using it. If not, you find something, that you want to use. I think we're changing that over the next few years. We're going to, especially with the newer version of CakePHP coming out, we're going to try focusing more on getting marketing out there, supporting the local user groups. James and Jorge, with their donation of the proceeds from the book that they wrote, that's going to go to the foundation. The foundation is going to be able to help support, hopefully financially, some of these user groups that are out there. Most of the funds that come in the foundation now go directly to help alleviate some of the cost here and bring that down. But they've launched the training now, the certification, and all of that's going to, financially it's going to help us be able to do more things with the community, not necessarily on the marketing side unless we can hire a marketer, or somebody out here. I'm sure somebody works for a company that does marketing, right? No, okay. See, we're all developers, so none of us know.
Okay, so a few things to your question. First of all, there is a central hub for the community. It's found at community.cakephp.org. Basically, the initial page of that just gives you all of our social reach, so you can find where we are other than cakephp.org. There's also an option on that page which is Get Involved, which takes you to a page which breaks down all of the ways that you can get involved with CakePHP. And that goes beyond development. So how can you support the framework with maybe translations, maybe you can write documentation, maybe you can start a user group, hackathon you mentioned, any sort of event which sort of promotes the framework or helps people get involved with the framework. If you can provide some sort of training, for free, or if you want, want to charge for it, whatever. I, for example, am really inspired by Mozilla. The way they've handled their local movements, because what they've done is they've invested a lot in the local communities and they've empowered the local communities. Now the problem we're having now with CakePHP is with 3 coming out, we're starting to sort of feel a bottleneck, because right now it's kind of centralized how we're handling things, and that takes its toll. So it's really important that people in the community, they're really enthusiastic and they've got the motivation and the willingness to do stuff and they're inspired by it. We just need to enable that. Like Mark said, providing tools, providing you some sort of monetary investment so you can pay for things, because things cost money. But enabling you to do it, but then letting you go about and doing it. We just sort of said, this is what we're looking for. This is the kind of approach we're taking. So it's not like a bunch of headless chickens, because it just makes no sense then. But like Larry said, like over the last 2 years, mostly what I've been doing is sort of bringing stuff together, because it was kind of chaotic. There was a lot of stuff about CakePHP, but there wasn't like a direction. So for me, it's been really important that before we do anything, there's a really clear direction. Because if a lot of people are suddenly going to get involved, that direction becomes really important, because we all need to focus. Because otherwise, the different messages are being sent, or wrong messages are being sent. And then you're just going to get to a point where you meet someone, they said, yeah, I was one of your local events, and it was rubbish, because they were telling me how I should use Symfony instead of CakePHP. So we need to make sure that there's a focus.
If you ever do that at a user group for CakePHP, I'll be knocking on your door. No, I'm kidding.
I just have a final thing to add. I think that all of you have something like super small to do, like in your own places from your own desks. One thing that I was discussing with Larry and Mark the other day is the need for people to go to these blogs, Reddit or whatever, and try to dispel all the bad opinions about CakePHP. They are mostly misguided. So just try to promote as little as possible, just perhaps responding to a tweet that has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, or adding comments or stuff like that. Write a small blog post. Yeah, so spread the word in the way you can. It's not about evangelizing the framework. I mean, there are so many frameworks and they do so many things. But if you think you're comfortable with it, and you've seen the framework being bashed or being put down for whatever reason that you know is not true because you use it in a daily basis, just take 5 minutes and answer. That's it.
Thank you.